Total Screen proudly presents their official podcast, On Screen, with your hosts, Tyson Gifford and William Roerig. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the On-Screen podcast, the official podcast of thetotalscreen.com. My name is Tyson.
My name is Will.
And today we are going to be talking about What We Do in the Shadows as usual, but we are also going to be discussing, in full spoilers, the entire first or only, we don't know yet, season of Squid Game. And we're going to go over some news stories. Some stuff happened with DC. There were some Disney movie delays, some other stuff. We're going to go over that and some release dates of stuff that's coming up.
The season of delays.
Yep. COVID season delay time. But we're going to get all into that. So let's start with our news segment on Beat. On Beat, as I said, is our news segment. First up, DC FanDome. So at the DC FanDome event, they had a bunch of trailers and stuff. Most of it seemed to be like kind of the actors saying, we don't have a trailer yet, but here's something. And then showing like a brief clip or like something that basically is a teaser, but they said wasn't. Like in the case of The Flash, that totally was a teaser.
Yeah. The Flash was a teaser.
Well, we don't have a teaser yet. And then they
Black Adam was a teaser.
That was a scene.
Yeah, well, yeah, but that's still a tease. They barely even showed them.
Yeah, they did a Shazam one that was like behind the scenes with a few clips. They did a behind the scenes for Aquaman too, but there was like no real clips at all from that. It was like just behind the scenes.
I didn't really watch the behind the scenes. I kind of like just skipped the footage because like I don't really care about the behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah. I just mean like the Shazam one was a behind the scenes, but they actually had clips.
Yeah, they had.
And then the Aquaman one was behind the scenes, but there was nothing. It was only behind the scenes, you know, it didn't show anything.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, everything looked good. The real standout for me was the Batman trailer.
Yeah.
That kind of blew me away.
Well, that was the only like real trailer.
Yeah, it's still a real trailer, but it was a damn good trailer. But that, you know, like it's Matt Reeves. I mean, like, look what he did with Planet of the Apes. So like he's, you know, genuinely talented. So it doesn't surprise me. I think Robert Pattinson's going to make a great Batman.
Yeah, probably better than Ben Affleck.
Better than Batfleck, definitely. I'm sorry, Ben Affleck.
And Batfleck should always be said in Gilbert Gottfried's voice as a duck.
Yeah.
Batfleck.
I like that this is the Batman. I like that it's its own universe and not connected to the DCEU, just because, like, the tone, it's the same thing with the Nolan.
Isn't this supposed to take place in, like, the 90s or something?
This is, like, its own separate universe.
Okay. I think when this was first announced, they were talking about it taking place in the 90s, and I thought, maybe it's, like, a continuation of the Joker's universe, because that was, like, in the 70s, I think, so that would kind of time out, right?
This is supposed to be centered around a younger Batman.
Yeah.
Than what you see.
It's apparently also supposed to be more of a focus on like the detective side of the Batman.
Yes, it's supposed to be like
hasn't really been addressed too well in the movies yet.
It's supposed to be more of a noir style story. So it'd be very interesting. It looks fantastic. The reason I say like I like that this is a separate universe and not connected, because like again, it's the kind of tone and style that doesn't mesh well when you start throwing Superman and fucking Aquaman and shit into it. Like I can never see this version of Batman like teaming up with the Flash. Like just can't see it. The Ben Affleck, sure, that's goofy enough to do that. That's fine. But it's the same thing with the Nolan Batman, you know, like the tone and the seriousness of it doesn't blend well with their other franchises.
Yeah.
But, you know, I like this tone for Batman. It works for this franchise, so that's fine by me. DCEU is kind of a mess anyway, so...
Speaking of Batman, they didn't have a clip or a trailer, but they also announced a new animated Batman series called Batman Caped Crusader, which is being billed as a animated series spiritual successor because it's being done by Bruce Timm.
That's interesting. I have to see how it comes out, but that sounds promising. If Bruce Timm is going back to animation going back to Batman.
Yeah, I mean, they've done a few animated Batman shows, or a lot more than a few, I should say.
A lot more, a few, yeah.
Most of them haven't really been received that well. Most people like the animated series, and they like Batman Beyond.
That Batman Beyond was also Bruce Timm.
Yeah. And then
that was more of a spin-off of the animated series.
I know some people liked like Brave and the Bold and some of the other ones, but like there have been so many Batman animated shows.
There's like the Batman. That's with the Batman, the movie happening. Yeah.
But this is Bruce Timm.
Which had kind of like a weird like animation style.
This is Bruce Timm, though, and he's the one that did the stuff that everybody loves, including creating the character of Harley Quinn.
Yes, absolutely.
So he has his place in the Batman mythology, you know. He's a good person for this, and he's already proven himself in this exact kind of project. So that's exciting. And then the last thing kind of note, I think, from FanDome was they had another trailer for Peacemaker. Again, it's just kind of a real short kind of tease.
Right.
But it's just kind of, it brings in the humor. It looks good. I love the Eagle sidekick character, giving him a hug. But yeah, that's DC FanDome. Not much else to say about that. What do you think about these kind of events in general, like FanDome and Tadum and all these kind of like Comic-Con without Comic-Con specific to a company events that we've been getting like a bunch of?
It's interesting because it's the same thing that's happening in the video game space, right? You're seeing companies like kind of like eschewing E3 to do their own company specific events.
I think all of them combined, all the industry ones, the movie ones, and the video game ones, all of them together, the only ones that have done it right are Nintendo.
Yeah, same. Nintendo's the only one who presents the information like straightforward with as little cringe as possible.
Yeah. God, Tadum
is what I want.
There was this whole skit, not just one, like they did all these skits with like the cast that looked like they were put together by PR teams rather than like comedy writers.
Right.
They were like really
probably
bad.
Were, yeah. And I just want the information. Just give me the information.
Yeah.
That's all I want.
Yeah, the moments with the cast like that feel like they're just there because they're contractually obligated to be are like painful. Tadum was worse though.
Okay, I didn't even watch Tadum. I didn't watch this either, to be honest. I just watched the trailers that got posted to YouTube.
Yeah.
I didn't really watch the whole event. I don't have the patience to sit there and like watch a bunch of like PR marketing junk.
Yeah, it's pretty painful. It's pretty painful. But that's DC FanDome. The other big news story we have to go through is Disney delayed basically their entire 2022 Marvel slate as well as Indiana Jones. Basically what they did is they had some set slots for their movies and they moved all of their slots back.
Yeah,
so
by a slot.
Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness was supposed to come out March 25th. Now it's coming out May 6th. Thor Love and Thunder was supposed to come out May 6th, but because Doctor Strange was pushed to May 6th, Thor Love and Thunder was pushed to July 8th, which is when Wakanda Forever was supposed to come out, which is now coming out November 11th, which was when The Marvels was supposed to come out, which is now coming out February 17th, 2023. Which is when Ant-Man and the Wasp was supposed to come out, which is now coming out July 28th, 2023. And then Indiana Jones, outside of all of that, was just delayed a full year, or like 11 months, from July 29th to June 30th, 2023, from 2022 to 2023. So that's the Disney delays. There's not really much to discuss about that. This is probably just another symptom of the lockdown and everything that's happened with that. Next up, there was a clip released from Cowboy Bebop. It's really interesting because they did a lot of stuff with like comic panels. Like it would show the characters and they'd be like in separate panels, and then a character would grab one of the panels and move it over. And so they're doing this like way of like interacting with like comic panels kind of thing that looks really cool, but it's kind of almost like too much. It looks cool, like it would be really good as like a commercial, but like if the whole show's like this, it's going to get like real like try hard, you know?
Right.
Also, as I thought before, it does have kind of like this exploitation film kind of vibe to it from the actual footage, except that it's too clean. Like I think they should have put some kind of a gritty filter on it. They should have probably popped up the contrast quite a bit. But it just looks too shiny and clean for the aesthetic they're kind of going for. But I'm still kind of holding out hope, and that this is just kind of like more of an introductory scene, and that it's going to be a little bit different as the show goes on, or we'll have to see like more of it. It always ends up being every time they show something else of Cowboy Bebop, it makes me want to go, okay, well now we have to wait to see what this actually means.
Right.
That's that. And then our kind of last story in our news is like kind of a two-part story, and it has to do with the Animal Crossing event or direct that Nintendo put out. This was like the next day, I think, after we recorded our last podcast.
On an unassuming, calm Friday in October, Nintendo decided they really need to do something to piss everybody off.
I guess we should probably get through the regular Animal Crossing stuff really quickly.
We should.
Because there's not too much to talk about. I'm not going to go into details on every piece of, information. Basically, what they revealed is that they're getting the last update, and then they're getting paid DLC. Yes. And all that's coming in November. And the last update's pretty big. It seems to bring it up to parity with the 3DS version of the game. Brings back the roost and gives you a bunch more options stuff. The DLC is almost like Happy Home Designer. Added
it is happy. It's literally Happy Home Designer, the sequel, being added to Animal Crossing instead of being like its own separate thing.
You can do cool things, so like you can finally change the size of rooms.
Yes,
and you can add wall partitions and pillars and stuff.
Well, you can't change the size of rooms in your home.
Oh, I thought it was saying initially you could do that. You could do that with just the places that you're doing for other people, but then you could do it with your own place.
No, you could put the partitions and stuff. There was specifically a disclaimer that said you can't change the room sizes in your home.
That's the one place you'd want to change them.
Yeah, I kind of understand why it's like that. Because, I think the way it's set up, the game depends on those rooms being a certain size. But since, the content in the DLC is completely new, they can mess with that. But that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, the facilities is nice, because I made these weird outdoor facilities with, gym equipment and stuff. So it's nice that you can actually, make just straight up legit facilities that you can enter in and have walls and everything.
That's really cool. I like that. Yeah, I gotta say, I was pretty much happy with everything about Animal Crossing and the Direct. It brought, all the features we wanted in the free update. The DLC is literally Happy Home Designer, so it's not like the DLC doesn't really add anything to the main game. There's not certain villagers you get access if you have the DLC only or anything. It's not it's a separate island with stuff to do on that island, and that's fine.
And the DLC, we should say, is $25 basically.
Yeah, it's $25 for DLC. Like I said, they sold Happy Home Designer on 3DS as its own game, not even connected to New Leaf, for $40? And this is a sequel to that. So I think $25 is perfectly reasonable for that.
Mm-hmm. And so this is the $25 goes into, or for the DLC goes into our next part of this story, which is the bigger part. The part that caused outrage.
This is the part because Nintendo had to sneakily drop this information in the middle of the Animal Crossing Direct. Almost like they were trying to sweep it under the rug.
You know what it's like? It's like when a parent finds a pill and some food.
Yeah, exactly. Here's all this awesome Animal Crossing stuff. I had $30 more for N64 and Genesis games on
it. Well, what they announced is that the DLC, I think the way they segued it is they announced the price of the DLC. And
they announced the DLC.
That instead of paying the price of the DLC, you could gain access to it through the Nintendo Switch Online expansion pass, which immediately sent red flags up because I'm like, if that's $25 and they're going to give you access to it, then it's going to be more than I thought it was going to be to update it. And it's significantly more. Ended up being $30 more. This is for the individual plan. You can still just keep the individual plan at $20. That's what I'm doing. Or you can get the expansion pass for another $30. So that's to $50 a year. And that grants you what they already said, the N64 and Genesis games, but also the Animal Crossing DLC, none of which I'm really that terribly interested in, which is why I'm sticking with the $20.
I looked it up. As far as the Genesis games go, there's only 3 games on the initial list that you can only access through the subscription. The rest of the games you can get through a combination of the Genesis collection for Switch Castlevania Anniversary Collection and Contra Anniversary Collection.
If you even want them all.
Yeah, if you want them all. There's like 3 games on there. Musha, Echo the Dolphin, surprisingly. And then there was a Strider. The only games that you can only play on your Switch if you get the subscription on the Genesis side. Of course, there's no other way to get the N64 games on Switch.
You're a huge fan of like retro games and you need all those Genesis games. Chances are you already have those other means as well. So... I mean, I doubt there's that many people that are like, finally, Genesis comes to Switch.
Finally, a way to play Sonic.
I never bought it. I never bought the Genesis collection that was on Switch.
By the way, there's also the Sega Ages version of Sonic 2 that's also available on Switch. So there's that. There's options.
Yeah.
On the Genesis side, at least. And for me, it's like, I was expecting $10 at the most to access the extra virtual console stuff on the Switch, like $10 at the max. So I was thinking like, okay, $30 a year instead of $20 a year.
Yeah, I was thinking the most it would be double. It'd be like from 20 to 40. And that would be at the absolute most. Like they're not going to go more than the base
they're going to go more than double.
I mean, when was the last time you heard of like a DLC pack that cost more than the game?
Yeah.
Because they're marketing this as an expansion pack.
Yeah, it's an expansion and it costs more than you. Yeah, it's ridiculous pricing.
Yeah.
Like, I have no idea. Like, what I think is like, they see Sony and they see Microsoft charging like $60 for their services. I think Nintendo wants to get there in pricing. And I think this is them trying to justify having a $50 price tag for their service. And it's like, no, it's not enough. You need to sweeten the pot, Nintendo. This feels weak. I think like throwing in the DLC was kind of like a last minute thing to like try and like pump this up.
I don't think it's going to work the way they hoped either, because I think a lot of people are just done with Animal Crossing. I think they took way too long on this update.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm not going to hammer them on that because I understand like COVID throw a wrench in like everybody's plans. This does feel like
you could say that, but at the same time, this is such a huge update.
This free update does feel like a year's worth of content.
Exactly.
Coming all at you at once.
They could have been releasing this over time, but instead they didn't. And when they didn't, I think most Animal Crossing players are just done. Like they're not, I know you're still playing it.
I'm still playing it. I still got
I'm
goals.
not playing it. My mom was playing it every day for over a year. Like she'd go like an hour every single day, wouldn't miss a single day. She's done with it. I showed her the direct thing because, like I said, she used to play this game every day for over a year. And she watched the thing and was like, nah, just wasn't interested. She's done. She's done with Animal Crossing.
Yeah, she's done. It'll be interesting to see how well the DLC does. Yeah. I don't think this is going to incentivize a lot of people to jump in on this.
I think they waited too long, too.
Thinks they will.
I think they waited too long.
Yeah, I think so. I just don't see like including random DLC for random games as like an incentive. Like not everybody is going to have those games or want that DLC. Especially when all I want to do is play some N64 games. I don't want the price to be ballooned by DLC that I don't care about. Yeah. Like, come on, Nintendo. Yeah, like, they should at least have a tier that's... plan. Yeah, at least do, like, another tier that only has the expansion packs.
Oh, they'll never do that.
Yeah, they won't do that. Like, it's not a good deal, in my opinion.
Part of me wonders if Nintendo realizes that they took too long on the Animal Crossing stuff, and they want to like save face, so they tried to package it in.
Well, that's why they're
Nintendo Switch Online for that exact reason.
That's probably why they're also not doing any more content for Animal Crossing after this, because they kind of realize it's over. Yeah. It is what it is. Are you going to be getting the expansion pack?
No.
Okay. I'm not
getting the expansion pass, and I'm not getting the DLC for Animal Crossing.
At least not in the near term. I might get the DLC. I'm not signing up for the expansion pack, at least not anytime in the near term.
I honestly think the expansion pass
what happens in the future
has hurt more than it's helped with like stuff like the N64. Because for instance, the N64 games that I would want to play with the expansion pass are Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. But now that pretty much guarantees we're not going to get ports of the 3DS versions, which were greatly improved. We're just going to get the N64 ROMs, which look very dated. Even when you can run them at a higher resolution, they still look extremely dated. And so it's like, okay, well, I don't play handheld, so I can't play the 3DS one. I guess I'm never going to get those versions, like a clean version, because it's just we're going to get the N64 ones instead. And that doesn't interest me. I'm like, yeah, I think it's hurt more than it's helped. with my interest in certain things. So its very existence hurts.
It does hurt. I would happily subscribe to this for like $10 or something, but
yeah.
Oh well.
That's our news segment. We're moving on now to On the Horizon. On the Horizon is the segment where we talk about what's coming up in the next couple of weeks, basically between now and October 29th on Friday. So here's some stuff that's coming up. We already mentioned these first two in our last week's discussion, but it bears reminding that Locke and Key Season 2 comes out this Friday, October 22nd. By the time this podcast is up, it'll probably be up already as well. And Dune comes out. It's actually going to come out a little bit early, as movies do now, on Thursday, but it's technically considered a Friday release. On Friday, October 22nd, Dune comes to theaters and HBO Max as part of that big HBO Max dual release strategy for this year. And we'll be talking about Dune next week, so stay tuned for that. After that, on Sunday, October 24th, Curb Your Enthusiasm returns on HBO. I love that show. I'm excited about that coming back. On Monday, October 25th, 4400 comes to the CW. Did you watch the original The 4400 that was like on USA?
No.
Okay, so that was like a really interesting and kind of popular show. It came out like, it was one of those ones, I think it came out around the time like Lost did, and it was doing the kind of like, oh, we can do a mystery show too kind of thing. But it was one of the better ones, and it was actually pretty well liked. This is a remake of it, though, just called, they dropped the, so it's now just 4400, and it's going to be a CW show, which means it's going to be like all probably teenagers this time, where it was like people of like vast age ranges before. So yeah, Can't wait to watch that get butchered by the CW.
Right. Yeah, goddamn. CW.
We got two things coming on Tuesday, October 26th. The Last OG returns on TBS. This is a Tracy Morgan show, who's hilarious. If you know who Tracy Morgan is, you kind of got an idea of what to expect. That's good. Also on that day, Guardians of the Galaxy, the video game, comes out on pretty much everything. PS4, PS5, Xbox One, One X, Series S, Series X, PC, and Switch as a cloud version.
It's like 150 gigs for like the PC version.
It's one of those games that makes a case for the cloud version. Yeah. You don't have to do updates. You don't have to install this massive file, it's all that's in the background. On Thursday, October 28th, Hitmen returns on Peacock. This is like a British comedy series. I put this on here because I actually quite enjoyed the first season. It was one of the shows I watched when I got my Peacock subscription. Nice. And I just wanted to watch some comedies, and there was a bunch of them. And it's about these two women that are hitmen, but they're pretty incompetent. And they're just kind of like somehow got roped into it. And they just seem like middle-aged women that are somehow working as hitmen. And it's pretty funny. So I'm excited to have that return. Then also on the 28th, there's quite a few things on the 28th, actually. Star Trek Prodigy comes to Paramount Plus. This is the animated series that features Janeway. It's returning, but as like a hologram character. Yeah, I heard about that if you follow.
This is an animated series. I guess this is like being targeted at like a young audience.
I think this was originally made for like Nickelodeon or something.
This was originally supposed to be a Nickelodeon show, yeah.
And then it got moved to Paramount Plus.
Of course, they would just move it to streaming. That seems to be the popular thing to do these days. Yeah, they brought Janeway back as a hologram for this. They got Kate Mulgrew to reprise her role. It's about the extent I know about it, to be honest.
Yeah, if you're a Star Trek junkie, it might be worth checking out. I mean, if you're a Star Trek junkie and you have Paramount Plus, that's probably why you have Paramount Plus.
Because like that's probably a lot of Star Trek on that streaming service already. So
yeah. There's two more things for the 28th, both video games. Fatal Frame: Maiden of Blackwater. Wasn't this the Wii U game?
This was a Wii U game. Now it's getting ported, remastered.
To everything.
Yeah, ported to current gen systems. So it's another game that you no longer need a Wii U to play.
Yeah, and like Guardians of the Galaxy, it's coming to everything, including the Switch. Unlike Guardians of the Galaxy, the Switch version is not a cloud version.
Yeah, it's native, which makes
because this is a Wii U port,
Doesn't, that'd be silly.
Voice of Cards, The Isle Dragon Roars, also comes out on October 28th for PS4, PC, and Switch. I played the demo for this. This was announced, and a demo came out at the last Nintendo Direct. It's who's the guy that did it? It's the guy that did like Nier, the Nier series.
Oh yeah, I know who you're talking
and Dragon Guard, or like those games.
Drakengard.
Drakengard, that's it. that's why people have this game on their radars, because of his involvement. It means it's probably going to have some fucked up weird storyline, as all of his stuff does. And and it's kind of just a cool concept with, it's a RPG that's entirely cards, not just a card battle system, but everything is cards in the game. And it's pretty cool. I enjoyed the demo, and the demo is unrelated to any of the characters in the story, apparently. It's just to kind of get you an idea of the way it plays rather than any of the storyline. So I'm actually kind of interested to see what the actual game's like. So I'm looking forward to that one. And then lastly, we have 4 things on Friday, October 29th. Army of Thieves, the movie, comes to Netflix. This is the Army of the Dead prequel spin-off movie. Mario Party Superstars comes out on Nintendo Switch, also on Friday, October 29th. Last Night in Soho, this is the new Edgar Wright movie, comes out on October 29th in theaters. And Antlers, another horror movie, comes out on October 29th in theaters. Any of those interest you?
Last Night in Soho, definitely, because Edgar Wright is an awesome filmmaker.
Yeah. What about Mario Party Superstars?
That could be fun, but I'm not in a rush to get that.
Not really a great game during the pandemic, I don't think.
Right, yeah, exactly.
It's got full online, but most people want to play Mario Party on the couch together.
I don't have anybody play Mario Party with, so
yeah,
it's depressing these days.
That's one of those games that's like a lot of fun to play when you were like maybe in high school or just out of high school.
Yeah,
and when you're like a little bit past that, it's just doesn't really work the same way,
Right, yeah, exactly.
But that's it for On the Horizon. Our next and final segment is full spoilers. We're going to be talking about 2 things in full spoilers on this episode. We're going to be talking about What We Do in the Shadows, Season 3, Episode 8, The Wellness Center. And also we're going to be talking about the entire first or perhaps only season, depending on what Netflix chooses to do, which I'm sure it means first season, of Squid Game, because that's such a phenomenal hit. Let's kick things off with What We Do in the Shadows, and Squid Game is going to probably be a much deeper, longer conversation. What We Do in the Shadows, Season 3, Episode 8, The Wellness Center. I don't know. There's just not a lot to talk about when we talk about What We Do in the Shadows.
This is an Andor-centric episode. It's pretty
funny.
Fun episode because the whole premise is Nandor is depressed from just living so long.
Yeah, they talked about vampire depression as a specific thing.
And staring down the barrel of eternity,
Yeah.
And so he's lost his zeal for living. And then while doing vampiric council duties that they literally goad him into doing.
I love how Nadja wants him to do it. She's saying it'll give you something to do, but really it's just because she doesn't want to do it.
Yeah, exactly. She doesn't want to do it. And she's asking everybody else, and they're making excuses, or they're following her script or something. And she asks Colin Robinson, and Colin Robinson's oh no, I'm not man enough to do that, or whatever.
Just to try to goad Nandor.
Yeah.
So Nandor goes to this place.
It's a wellness center.
Very 80s themed.
Yeah, very 80s themed, apparently.
It's jazzercise 80s stuff.
And he finds out the leader there is this vampire woman who purports that she's found a way to become human again.
I love how she's showing off in front of him that she can drink and eat and stuff, and he's all blown away kind of.
Yeah.
And then she goes off to the corner and is violently throwing it all up.
yeah, exactly. And so Nandor gets wrapped up in this idea that he could become human again. And he finds this new zeal that he's been lacking for a while, with these people. And basically, he leaves to live with this group and become human.
Fully drinks the Kool-Aid and gets into this group.
He fully drinks the Kool-Aid. And then Guillermo decides that he's going to bust him out of there and bring him back,
It's great because in doing so, he exposes Jan's lies to her whole group, and then they feel all betrayed, and then she's no, it's our time of ascension, we can run into the sun, and then she opens up the door and they all just run out to their death, and she just closes the door and flies away.
It seems to be like it's leading into the next episode because it like ends on a cliffhanger because they got Nandor locked up.
It's kind of a dark note because he's locked up and they say he's removed his fangs.
Yeah, he's removed his fangs, but they grow back. Yeah. They made a note about that. They grow back in that place like they were removing their fangs every day because they just grow back in the morning.
Yeah. It kind of like was presented like an almost pretty dark ending. Like,
yeah, it was like
fuck, you know?
Yeah, because Nandor is like, he's not deprogrammed, you know, he's still like a big believer in that.
Yeah.
And so they got him locked up.
We'll have to see how they continue it. Like if they do continue it from that standpoint or if it's just kind of back to stasis.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, it's one of the few episodes of What We Do in the Shadows that doesn't end in stasis.
Right, yeah, exactly. It doesn't go right back to status quo at the end of it.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens next episode. Because, you know, this was episode 8, so I think
there's 10 or 13. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think we're getting close up to the end of the season.
And we're at least more than halfway through. But that's What We Do in the Shadows. Now let's move on to what's going to be probably the majority of our discussion this week.
This is what the people want. This is the Squid Game.
Yep. So we're going to be talking about Squid Game.
Everybody in the world is obsessed with.
Yep. Will guilted me into watching this last week.
I guilted. Well, you know, it's so funny that you didn't like watch this on your own because this seems like the type of thing that's like straight up your alley. Like I don't typically watch Korean dramas, Asian dramas. I know that, you know, you're all about that kind of stuff.
I actually don't watch too much like live action Asian stuff.
Oh, okay.
I watch a lot of anime and stuff. I've watched some, but not too much. But yeah, like Squid Game's up my alley. I think more in just the case that it's like a death game.
Yeah,
which I've been into quite a few of those things, and it's also
it just sounded interesting.
It's got that kind of like that iconic visual aesthetic and like that Black Mirror-esque like, you know, style to it. That
it is very Black Mirror-esque.
That like I love. So, you know, it's in that way.
Basically, like, yeah, because Black Mirror usually carries like a social critique, and this is all a social critique, you know, in the same vein.
Yeah, it's interesting. Have you ever watched Parasite, the Korean movie?
I have not, but I need to.
Okay, I think you should. I think you'd really like it. There's a similar class structure argument. It's not a similar project. It's not like a death game kind of thing like this, but it's similar in the sense of the way it handles the idea of like class issues in South Korea. You know, it's like a big part of that. What I like about this and the way it handled class is that usually like when you get to like a death game type storyline, the people really have no choice about it. Like they're just in the game. They're locked into it. They have no choice.
Yeah, exactly. They have no choice. What I love about this is that, they flipped on its head. They did give them initially they have no choice, but as soon as they find out what's going on, they're given the option to end the game and go back home, which they do.
Yes.
In episode 2. And then from there on in, the people in the Squid Game are there of their own volition, knowing the stakes.
Yeah, most of them come back. So I think it was like they started at, 400 and something?
Yeah, and then a bunch of people get killed in the first game.
Yeah, like about half of them get killed. Yeah. And then they're down to like 200. They said like 201 or something.
They said like 100 or so people didn't return.
I think it was less than that. I thought it was because they were down to like just over 200. And then I think like 180 returned. So it was only like a handful. It was only like 20 or something that didn't return.
That's true. Yeah, that makes more sense.
So yeah, it wasn't that many that didn't return. It was the vast majority of them returned.
Because they made the distinction, because episode 2 is all about the main characters returning to their lives.
Yeah.
And realizing that, their lives are crap because they owe people money, or, you know, they don't have like enough money to get by. They're
already in a death game. It's just a much slower death game.
Yeah, it's a much slower death game. You know?
Yeah, in which the torture is prolonged and dragged out, and there's no way out of it.
Right.
That's the situation that their real life is in. So that's what I like about this, is that it frames it in the sense that they have a choice, which would normally you'd go like, oh, okay, well now I don't feel bad for these characters because they've made their choice. But like they have a choice, but do they really have a choice?
Right.
Because like what is in their outside lives? These people are not just poor, they're like heavily in debt to like lenders and stuff. They're in dire situations. I mean, like, you know, they might be on the run from the police, or, you know, or from a criminal organization.
Yeah, you saw like the first episode, you know, the main character, he literally gets beat up by these gangsters who like threaten to
take his
like,
liver in his eye, I think.
Yeah, threaten to like remove organs and shit from him if he doesn't pay a gambling debt because he has a gambling addiction.
Yeah.
You know, we see that. And so, you know, like, yeah, this is like, they're not necessarily in a better situation out in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're in bad situations. They're in hopeless situations. So there's just no way out. There's no way that they're going to recover from the situation that they're in.
And they all have like different circumstances.
Yeah.
Like,
but they're all dire. Like, none of them are like, you know.
Songi is a gambling addict. You know, he got laid off from his job. Like, he used to be a factory worker working at auto factory. The deal with that is like the workers went on strike and he joined the strike, and the police came in and they brutalized the striking workers. You know, it was
killed somebody right in front of them.
Killed somebody right in front of them. It was a very traumatic experience, you know. And
he does some chauffeur work, but
he does some chauffeur work. So that incident right there kind of led him down the path of, you know, his life being in shambles.
Yeah, I mean, it's union breaking by the police, which further plays into the class issue.
Right, yeah, exactly.
This isn't like he ended up in this situation not entirely on his own fault, you know? Like, it shows that the things were stacked against him because of the class issues, because he came from a poor area, you know?
Right.
He has a childhood friend that he met up in the Squid Game as an adult.
Yeah, that's Song Woo, who, you know, he's different circumstances, you know, like he apparently graduated from a prestigious university and he got like a pretty good job at a company, but, you know, for one reason or another, he started like embezzling money.
Well, what he said is that like he needed money to make money.
Yeah.
And so that's the idea, is that like, yes, he got into a prestigious position, but he did so from being poor. And so instead of just like, oh, okay, now you have a prestigious position, you can make money. It's like, oh no, you have no resources to start with. So you might be in a prestigious position, but you can't do anything with it because you got no money to start with. And so again, that plays into the whole class war issue. That because of his background, even though he did everything right to get out of that background, he's still fucked.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a Pakistani contestant.
Yeah, he's a Pakistani immigrant who was working and his boss was withholding pay from him.
Yes.
You know, and this
just
is
outright being screwed over, you know?
Yeah, outright being screwed over. Apparently, like, it's a thing that very commonly happens to immigrants.
Yep.
And so that's his deal. Kang Se Byuk. I'm so sorry if I'm angling any of these names. I don't speak Korean. I'm not used to it.
Yeah.
I'm not trying. I'm doing my best. Please understand.
Send hate mail to @VoxelHero on Twitter.
She is actually a refugee from North Korea, and she's trying to get her family out of North Korea.
She's been screwed over by the equivalent of coyotes. So like in the US, we have the coyotes that get people from Mexico to like America, and then a lot of times end up really screwing over the people that they're bringing in, like putting them into massive debts, making them basically work for like pennies on the dollar.
And that's what's happened to her.
Yeah. She's basically, she got over here, got a lot of money together and stuff. The money was basically just taken from her without any return. She wants to bring her mother over, but they're just not doing it. So she got involved in crime.
Yes, she got involved in pickpocketing, which again, the main character, Song Gi, runs into her pretty early in the first episode. You know, she picks his pocket.
Yeah.
You know.
He had just won a decent amount of money.
Yeah. From horse betting, you know.
Yeah.
Horses. Yeah.
And she steals it, you know. She bumps into him and he tries to like help her up as he's running away from debtors.
Yeah.
And he finds out that he's missing the money, and then he goes and he's trying to, you know, at first he's holding off on the debtors, but then when the threat's very clear, he's like, here, I have some money, I'll give it to you and I'll get the rest to you later, and finds out that he was pickpocketed.
Yes. There's our young woman we meet during the Squid Games, Ji Young. She doesn't have a huge part in this, but she does form a bond with Kang Se Byuk. And her deal was that her father murdered her mother.
Her father was like a pastor.
Yeah.
And then
her father murdered her mother, and then she in turn murdered her father.
And she was in jail.
Yeah.
And she had just gotten out of prison when she was approached. So she basically is in this game with, she's not necessarily in financial debt or anything, but she's like, she just has nobody and nothing.
Yeah. She has no life. She just came out of prison, you know. She has nothing.
And no family, you know. So it's just nothing. And then there's part of this old team is O Il Nam, who is this old man
who has a tumor, who's dying of a brain tumor.
And he's poor, and he wants to, I guess leave his family something, or, I don't know.
I don't know. He doesn't really explain his motivations for being in the game.
He has dementia, though.
Outside of being sick. That's the only explanation he gives. You don't really learn a lot about his backstory or anything. There's Zhang Diaksu, who is a gangster. His deal is he stole money from his boss, and, so he has that gang coming after him. And so he's there to kind of win the money back.
He was also the North Korean girl. She
was working for him, yeah.
Yeah, at one point,
At one point, yeah.
Yeah, so she learned how to
So they have a relationship. They have a hostile relationship because she's no longer working for him.
There's a few other kind of important characters in the story that we don't necessarily get the context of their situation.
No, we don't know their situations. We know there's Hanmi Neo, who seems to be very...
He's a big talker, very aggressive.
He's a big talker, very aggressive. She seems to be manipulative. She tries to get into Zhang Diaksu's good graces because she recognizes that he's strong and imposing. So she's a manipulator. We don't know her deal, but it seems to me she's mentally unstable. So that's probably contributed to her situation,
Yeah. And I think she mentioned that she had done extortion and some other crimes and stuff on the outside.
Yeah.
At one point, I think she was mentioning some of that stuff when she was talking big about herself, but we don't know how much of that is her weird bragging that she does and how much is,
But, even though you don't learn much about her backstory, she is one of the more prominent characters, one of the more memorable characters on the show.
There's a doctor. His name's Byung-gi, I think, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, which I probably am not. I
believe his deal is I think
it's a malpractice thing.
It was a malpractice. He was sued for malpractice. He lost his medical license. And so he lost his ability to practice as a doctor, and that led him into the Squid Games. He also has a subplot where he's being used by some of the guards to help them smuggle organs and make money from, smuggling organs.
Which is tied into the main plot line of the last major character, who is Hwang Jun-ho, who is a police officer.
Yeah,
his brother had gone missing.
His brother had gone missing, so he's investigating it. He does not join the Squid Games. He infiltrates.
He sneaks in, as a guard.
And he poses as a guard for most of the time.
Yeah. Did you watch the video I sent you of the pitch meeting for Squid Game joke thing?
I did not see that. I didn't see you post that.
It's funny, but one of the parts when he was talking about it, he's like, it's also infiltrating with all of their, because they make a point of showing how there's so much surveillance.
Well, all the guards, everybody has some ID chip or something because they scan them and it beeps. And he doesn't have that.
But yeah, so they were making fun of that plotline because they were it was he got into, the thing with all surveillance. That must have been really hard. And the guy's like, oh no, it was just really easy. He just looked in. But he must have done a lot of work to cover up where he was in conversations. Oh no, he pretty much just always says, where was that? What was that?
He acts like it's his first day, which for him it is, but the guard he's impersonating, they even notice a few times, you should know all this stuff. What the fuck are you talking about? But they never investigate it further. Yeah. They're always you should know this, duh. And then they go back to ignoring him.
The other thing they point out about his thing is that it's and he even kills one of the guards and throws him over a ship. And they're at the beginning of the investigation, you say. He starts out the investigation with murder.
Yes.
It's he does. He literally just without knowing any of the deal of what's going on. He has no proof that any murders took place, that any nothing. He just has no idea what's going on.
He can't have that guy
kill somebody.
You can't have that guy showing up later and saying, "Oh, somebody stole my suit." And
I know, but he's a police officer.
I know.
And he starts the very first thing he does is straight up murder.
Yeah, because he's fighting his brother. He gives zero shits.
Yeah. I think it's funny. I don't feel bad for the character.
Yeah, no, right.
I'm just saying it's funny.
We get the idea that the guards themselves are also young people who are being coerced into doing what they're doing through some means, some promise or something. But we don't really. They got
strict rules they're following too. They can't take off their mask, and if they do, they're just instantly killed.
Yeah, nobody can know their identity.
Yeah, not each other or nothing.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So, there's some weirdness there. They're definitely not there because they want to be.
Yeah. Like they're hard up too. Maybe not as hard up to be contestants.
Right.
But hard up enough that they're offered to do some sketchy work for money.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I think the whole subplot about the guards, like smuggling organs to make extra money kind of hammers that home too. Because you get the idea that they're hard up for money and these guards just figured out a way they can make more money on the side.
Like we said before we started podcasting though, this whole subplot involving this police officer, which ties this up, basically goes nowhere by the end. I think that kind of is a problem of this series in general, is that this whole series kind of ended on a whimper, I think. It didn't end that strongly at all. Like none of it did, I don't think. I think there are some emotional payoffs in some of it.
There's some emotional payoffs.
But almost everything started falling apart in like the last 2 episodes. As far as like, like the whole police thing, just basically, unless they do a second season, it's just almost completely
meaningless. It doesn't really go anywhere. And that's
it gives us some insight, I guess, into the background, but like there's other ways they could have done that.
Yeah, like the big twist is like the front man who is like the mysterious, like he wears like a black costume with a black mask.
It's like a polygonal mask.
He's not dressed like a normal guard, So
instead of a PlayStation button, he has a PlayStation character model for a face.
A PlayStation character model. He's a big mystery throughout, and finally, in episode 7, you get this big reveal that he is the missing brother that the cop was looking for. Like, he literally was a former winner of the Squid Games.
Yeah, like 5 years before or something.
Yeah, 5 years
before. So, like, well before he went missing, in quotation marks,
Yeah. So, we find out where his brother's been. And then he proceeds to kill his brother, presumably because you don't actually see a body.
Yeah, he shoots him in the shoulder and then he falls
in the shoulder and he falls off a cliff into the ocean.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
To me, that feels like sequel bait, or like second season bait.
Like I say, like in fiction, you don't know if somebody's dead until you see a body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that comes into play with something else that we'll, I'm sure, get into.
Oh, God. Okay, yeah, we'll get into this. Yeah, I should quickly mention the games they play are popular children's games, especially like in Korea. So some
of them are universal. I mean, Marbles,
Red Light, Green Light, Marbles,
universal. Red Light, Green Lights, Tug of War. And then there's the Honeycomb game, which is called in English, is very Korean specific. Yeah.
The Squid game itself is another specific Korean game.
And we all knew that was how it was going to end, right?
The Glass Bridge,
not only just because of the name of the show, but because the very first scene of the show is them playing as kids playing the Squid Game.
And detail in the narrator, Sung Ya-hun, basically narrating the rules of the Squid Game. So yeah, you knew that was the last game. The Glass Bridge is, to my knowledge, not a popular kids game. That's just a sadistic game.
And there might be a children's one that doesn't involve glass. That might just be kind of like hopscotch or something.
Maybe it's like you do on a sidewalk where like you're skipping like tiles because don't step on a crack or you'll fall and break your back.
Yeah, it could
be
some other kind of thing.
I don't know.
Loosely based on, but the one parody thing I sent you, they did a joke where they were talking about the glass bridge thing, and they said, and they have to step on the glass because there's no way to get across. And the guy said, what's holding up the glass? They said, oh, there's these steel rails on the sides. And it's like, but they can't be used to get across. Oh, they totally could have been.
Yeah. Right.
Of course, that ignores the fact that they would have shot them if they tried to do that, I'm sure,
Yeah, I'm sure.
They wouldn't be following the rules.
Exactly. You would just immediately get shot, which I don't know. To me, getting shot's probably preferable to falling and breaking my body in a million pieces. Except
that you have a chance to get across, where you don't have a chance if you're going to do the thing that's going to get you
very,
shot.
Very, very small chance.
Yeah, very small chance to get across, but no chance if you break the rules.
God, that episode, I'm not going to say it's a great episode, but I did really love the Glass Bridge challenge because that was super tense.
I thought the ending I really didn't like. Like, I know where they were going with it, where they when the glass bridge shattered at the very end.
Yeah, I was like,
after they got across, they had the payoff that a glass shard went into, which kind of doesn't make sense with them trying to play off the idea of fairness. Like, they won the game, they shouldn't be subjected to.
Yeah, that's why I was like, what the fuck they do that for? Like, that's not fair.
But I think my main
did get a glass shard lodged in her. Like, she got like a piece of fucking metal from the rail lodged into her side.
But I think the thing that I really object to even more than that is just that they had this like, God, must have been like 20-second scene of slow motion of them just like looking around as the glass was shattering. And it was like really like, okay, yeah, this, you know, you could have cut this down to like a second.
So let's go into kind of like, let's like try to condense this conversation and just go into like our most favorite or least favorite moments and the impact they had. For me, like episode 6, the Marvel game, was like probably the best episode in the season.
It was a good setup because they pick their partners.
Yes.
And they feel like, okay, this is the person that I most want to team up with, the person I trust the most in this game.
And it's a trick.
Yeah.
Because they're told to partner up.
Yeah.
And then like after they partner up, they're told, okay, well now you're gonna have to play a Marvel game with your partner, and whoever wins is the one who doesn't die.
I already didn't feel great about Song-woo, and then I fucking hated him after this episode. You know?
Song-woo was like, this was like, because he was like fucking sketchy earlier with like the honeycomb game and like knowing ahead of time like what it was, just because like he was able.
We got a clue from Kang Se-byuk.
Yes,
and then he purposely
because she saw them making the sugar,
but she's North Korean, so she has no idea what that means.
Right. She told him that she told Song-woo she saw them making sugar, and he figured it out from there.
And once he did, he's like, yeah, but we should all take different shapes.
Yes. He was trying to trick the others into taking the more difficult shapes.
And he had a chance to go back on that when Gi-hun got the umbrella, which is by far the hardest shape. And he like looked at him and he called out to him, and then he was like, never mind.
like, nah.
Yeah, I'll just let you die.
And I thought, that's kind of a shitty thing to do. And then like with Ollie, my God, Ollie was like the most pure.
He's the heart of the show. Yeah, he's the most
pure, kind-hearted. Unfortunately for him, trusting to a fault, because he really looked up to Song-woo.
Yeah.
That's what makes it even worse, is the fact that Ali thought the world of Song-woo.
Yeah.
And did not suspect for a second that Song-woo would try to screw him over.
How about Ollie's introduction?
Yeah.
What kind of introduction was that, man? Like, the main character almost dies, and it just kind of stops in midair. And he's, like, falling over.
Oh, yeah. And Ollie has him.
Yeah, Ollie's, caught him as a perfect stranger saved his life.
Exactly. It was like, so what Song-woo did to Ollie was like fucking, that's when that switch flipped for me, and like I fucking hated Song-woo from that moment on. I was like, I thought he was a dick before, and then I was like, nah, dude, you deserve whatever's coming to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Gi-hun also tricked his partner, but you could tell how hard he was struggling with it, you know, how he didn't want to do it.
He didn't want to do it. In Gi-hun's case, like, he felt pressured to do it because he literally didn't want to die. It's the same thing for Song-woo, but Song-woo did it like so callously and so easily, you know, where, you saw Gi-hun struggling with what he was doing.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, like the ending of that,
just a little bit, but old man was an old man who was already dying. You know, he didn't.
But
have much
still,
life.
like, man, like it hit me like a punch in the gut when Oh Il-nam lost. You know, and we saw like Song Gi-hun like walk away as the guard put the gun to Oh Il-nam's head, and then he heard the gunshot. I was like, Jesus Christ! Like that made me cry. Made me cry, and I don't usually cry at these things, but that got me. We
also got another big death was Ji Young.
Yep.
They had a great moment because it was really cool where it was like her and the North Korean girl, Kang Se-byuk.
Yeah,
the two of them just basically decided that they were going to do a one-off game
for all the marbles
at the very end, and then they were spend the rest of the time just talking without regrets.
And they did, and that's where we learned Ji Young's backstory, you know, and most of that. And it's great too because like once they get to the actual game, Ji Young purposefully loses to let Kang Se-byuk live and move on.
Yeah,
because as she says to Kang Se-byuk, you know, like she has nothing to go back to in the outside world, and all that money doesn't mean anything to her, you know, because, you know, she doesn't have any family. There's nobody she's trying to save or support, or, you know.
It was sad through their conversation. There were like several points in which like Ji Young would be like, when we get out of this, I got to take you by.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. One of us isn't getting out of this, you know?
Right. Yeah, exactly. So episode 6 was probably the best episode in my opinion.
Yeah, there are different ones that are good for different reasons. Like, I liked the way the final dinner scene ended. Like, I think less in episodes and more in like scenes. Yes. And so like when they had that dinner scene and they're eating and Kong Sebyuk is like clearly having trouble because she's bleeding to death.
And she's bleeding to death. She doesn't really eat it.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that like again, Song fucking Woo, you know, like he slits her throat and kills her when Gi-hoon is trying to get help for her.
Yeah.
And fucking, she was already dying, you fucking asshole. Like, really?
Yeah, and then he like acts like he was putting her out of her misery. It's like, no, fuck you.
No, yeah, exactly.
But then they had at the dinner scene when they started clearing, like the whole dinner scene was crazy because it was very tense and they weren't talking to each other. It was just like these glares at each other and stuff. And then they took away all the silverware and left the knives. Like that was very pointed. It wasn't like they were opportunistic and decided to sneak the knives out. It's like the staff went up and picked up all the silverware and all the plates and stuff and left the knives. Used. And that was like knives. That was like a real kind of chilling, like, because kind of moment, you know,
it was they were meant to use those knives against each other.
It's kind of like that when they weren't feeding them enough, you know, and started them fighting each other, you know.
The VIPs were terrible. You did well on that.
The English voice acting was horrible.
Yeah.
I mean, not voice acting. They were, you know, they were speaking in English in the original. Those characters. It was really bad acting. I think their whole inclusion wasn't really all that necessary.
No, it wasn't.
I mean, the only thing it fed into was getting that police guy to get information from that one guy, which we never saw recorded. They just implied that he said a bunch of, told them everything. And then that storyline didn't go anywhere. So, so it was completely pointless.
Okay. So let's talk about the ending because I'm conflicted about the ending. Like, obviously, like...
At which point? Like, where are we starting our discussion of the ending at? Are we talking about the 1 year later?
Gi-hoon wins. Yeah, let's start 1 year later. Gi-hoon wins. Song-woo kills himself at the end of the Squid game, you know, and basically, you know, tells Gi-hoon to, you know, just give, you know, his half of the money to his mother.
Well, the way this works that's interesting is that Gi-hoon is just about to win. He's like, Song-woo is on the ground. Yeah. Gi-hoon is like basically a millimeter from stepping in and winning the game. And there's no way at all for Song-woo to win. Like nothing. There's no chance. Yeah. And then in that moment, Gi-hoon stops and says that he wants to give up. He said, like, if they both vote as the majority, like they did before, they can leave, but they'd leave without any money. And it's right at the very end of the last game.
And Gi-hoon's only doing it because he doesn't want Song-woo to die.
Yeah.
You know,
through all his anger and animosity and all his saying that he was going to kill him and stuff, like at that point, he returned to himself and said, like, he's like, I can't do this. I can't kill him. We need to save each other. And so he's like, well, let's get out of here. Let's do this. And that's when Song-woo like kills himself because Song-woo knows that, you know, that's the one thing you can say about him as a character is for everything I hated him for what he turned into, at least he's a realist in the sense that he knows like it's not going to be okay if they were just returned without the money, you know?
Right.
That his life's pretty much over. He's going to go to prison, you know, like he's just going to be locked up and nobody's going to care about him anymore. His mother's going to be disgraced. All this stuff's going to happen, you know, and she's going to lose everything too. And then she'll be in like, it's just the whole thing's a mess. And he realizes that. So he kills himself and just says like, my mother, to let him know to take care of him.
So basically, Gi-hoon wins, and they drop him off, you know, back in the city, you know, with a credit card with all the money. You know, he gets all the money.
He does nothing for a full year.
Yeah, he does nothing for a full year. His mother, when he gets home, his mother is dead. She had died while he was, you know, she was already sick earlier, and she passed away while he was in Squid Games. And so, you know, he does nothing with the money for a full year. We catch up with him a year later. He's pretty traumatized, you know, from the whole experience. And he doesn't really know what to do with himself.
Yeah, the bank like contacts him and they want to like him to go, so he goes. And they're basically like, you haven't touched your money, you know, what's going on?
And he gets a message from the Squid Game because it's like on one of those cards. And, you know, and
he buys a flower there's a woman selling flowers and she's like begging him to buy, like she's struggling, and he gives the only money he has to her. And, you know, not that he has, but he has on him because he hasn't touched the money. And then
it's from his best friend, you know, is a gang. I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm not going to say it. It basically means like best friend, you know.
Yeah.
That's what the old man told him.
marbles. Yeah.
Yeah, it's what the old man said to him during the marble game, that, I'm going to be your best friend, and so that's what he recognizes it as. And he goes to the place, it's like the top floor of some building, some tower, and he goes there, and it's the old man in a hospital bed. He's alive. He didn't actually die at the end of the marble game. And then it turns out that he is the creator of the Squid Game. He's behind everything. That's the way it turns out.
Yeah.
And there was a big twist. He explains, that he made the Squid Game because he was bored. He doesn't really give any good justification for it. Just as, I had a lot of money and nothing was exciting me anymore. So, we did this to bring excitement to our lives. So it's like,
what's interesting because he came from poverty himself.
Yes.
And then ended up being wealthy. And he talks about you feel hopeless if you're very poor and if you're very rich.
Yeah.
Like if you're very poor, you can't do anything because you don't have any money. And if you're very rich, you have more money than you don't have goals anymore because you already have everything you could ever want.
And he basically explains to Gi-hun that this year, he wanted to experience the games himself. And this is where another commentary on the classes where the rich don't play by the same rules as the poor. Because he was in the games.
He didn't die.
He lost and he didn't die. He was in the games, but he was never in any real danger, unlike the rest of them.
Yeah. He also makes an important, to the very ending story, he makes an important comment in which he refers to the contestants as horses in a horse race.
Yes. Well, the
you're
front man
you've been to a horse race, you're like the horse.
The front man said basically the same thing to him too. After the game. Front man told him the same thing. Yeah, to them, they're horses. Mm-hmm. They're betting money on people instead of horses. I don't know. For one thing, I hated that twist for really undoing, the ending of episode 6 and really making me feel for this character. And then surprise, he's an asshole. And I'm like, damn you made me cry over a fucking asshole.
Well, I like that.
Yeah.
Because I like those kind of things. What I don't like is the way it ended kind of after that, which is that after the guy dies, then finally the guy decides to move on with his life, the main character Gi-hun. He goes to get a haircut and ends up picking this ridiculous red hair thing that was on the wall.
Yes.
And gets this ridiculous haircut, but it just kind of shows that he just needed a change. He needed to shed his past self. And that was the furthest thing from him. So he got it.
And then the very ending is sequel bait because he's being on a plane to go see his daughter in America, and instead he decides to go back to the Squid Games.
Well, what he saw was before he was at the airport.
Yeah, he saw the recruiter at the airport, recruiting somebody else, and that's what gave him the idea that he's going to go back to the Squid Games instead.
He took the card and he wasn't going to do anything. He was going to go and visit his daughter, and he was just about to board the plane, and he stopped.
So, final thoughts?
I think it's really good, and I think it kind of fell apart at the end.
Yeah.
Not just at the final ending scene, but like I said, like I mentioned, the whole police storyline was a waste.
Yeah, the police storyline didn't go anywhere.
I kind of laughed when a year went by and he hadn't done anything. I'm like, oh, so you just left the guy's mother floating in the wind.
Yeah,
you just left that kid that was basically being bullied in a children's home.
He finally does something with that stuff. But it took a year before he did. I understand he was traumatized by everything. Especially coming home after all that trauma, seeing those people die around him, and especially seeing his best friend from childhood kill himself in front of him, and coming home and immediately finding out your mother is also dead.
Yeah.
I get that's a lot of trauma. That's a lot to process. But he does wait a year to really do anything.
Yeah. And then at the end, he's deciding to, I guess, either enter back into the Squid Game or to go after them somehow. Use his resources to go after them.
It's a setup for more Squid Game if they choose to go forward with it, which the creator, he says he currently has no plans, but I'm pretty sure Netflix is beating down his door right now, saying we're going to give you the world. We're going to give you more than that 45 billion won. Make more.
Yeah, which equates to about 35 million, by the way. I looked that up.
Yeah.
And that's what the amount they're talking about. They're talking about billions, but that's in, Korean money.
Korean money.
And the Korean money, like Japanese money, is based on the penny rather than the dollar. So if you see somebody talk about in Japanese money, 1,000 yen, that's $10 because it's 1,000 pennies,
Yeah.
That's how they count it. So anyways, but still a lot. It's 35 million or something about.
That's still like
this was
amount of money.
created, written, and directed by a man named Hwang Dong-hyuk. And Hwang, when he made this, he wrote this in 2008. He had his own experiences with like class issues, and he wrote this based on that and tried to pitch it, and nobody would take this.
Nobody would take it. Yeah.
It took 12 years for somebody to make this, and the second it's made, it became like the biggest hit for the platform.
Yeah.
It's kind of just an interesting little factoid, you know?
Yeah, it is interesting.
But yeah, that's Squid Game. I'm sure we're going to get a sequel. I don't think that I necessarily want a sequel. I feel like they've done sequels to Death Game type stuff before. They did a sequel to like the Battle Royale movie. It wasn't good. You know, they've done that kind of stuff before, and it usually doesn't work that well. But we'll see. I mean, this took 12 years to make. Maybe we'll take 12 years before a sequel.
Yeah, pretty much.
I think the main thing is we're probably going to end up seeing some of these actors popping up in all sorts of stuff. We're going to see the actor who played Gi-hun like in the MCU or something.
Oh, maybe. Who knows?
You know, I think a lot of these people their careers are about to explode because of the popularity of this. But yeah, that's Squid Game. I think if you like Squid Game, there is a lot of stuff. And like I talked about Death Game, that's like a genre, basically. It's like an undeclared genre. Like it's not officially a genre, but it is kind of, you know. Of course, you know, like Hunger Games, Battle Royale is a good one. I'd recommend the book over the movie. The book's like much better than the movie for Battle Royale. They changed so much that it's almost unrecognizable. There's a lot of like anime and manga that kind of do like the Death Game thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot out there. You
do
your research.
But yeah, you know, look into it if you really like Squid Game. There's a lot of stuff like it out there. I think what made Squid Game most interesting outside of just being Death Game, because like I said, there's a lot of that, is both the way they did the class issues, which I think, like I said, it's really cool the way they did it, where they played to expectations. Like it wasn't people trapped in a game, like they had an out and they went against that, which made it more interesting. But it's not just that, but it's also, we talked about before I even watched it, there's so much iconography in this show.
Yeah.
From the masks to the sets, all the costuming, everything's iconic. You could have a person randomly smile like the main character did in his portrait, and everybody be like, oh, he's doing the Squid Game smile, you know? You're going to see those costumes. Those guard costumes are going to be major Halloween costumes. You already know that. Those are going to be all over the place. Those cookies have suddenly taken off. Those like honeycomb things. People like want those. Like a baker that makes those in Korea is like reporting massive sales that he can't keep up with since Squid Game came out. Like everybody wants this stuff. This is what you do when you have something that has a lot of iconography to it. You know, you're going to suddenly get like surges and everything related to that. It kind of reminds me of a little bit of Lost, which Lost also had great iconography, you know, between like all the Dharma stuff and the, you know, like there's so much iconography in that show. I'm always attracted to that. And I think that's a big part of what really made this work, as well as just the performances. You had a very sympathetic lead who, when the show started, I really wasn't too sympathetic. I'm like, God, this guy's like ruining his mom's life. He's like, you know, it's not because he's a layabout or he's poor. It's like the way he was gambling, using her card and stuff. But they show more depth to his character and show like that he is an imperfect person, but he's got his problems. But like that in general, he's a very like sweet person who, like, you know, even when he was running away from the debtors that were chasing him, when he ran into the pickpocket, he stopped to check to see if she was okay. Like that speaks to his character, you know, things like that. So yeah, I think those are the kind of things that made it really work. So that's it for this week's podcast. Next week, we're going to be talking about What We Do in the Shadows, Season 3, Episode 9, as well as the Dune movie, which will be available this Friday on HBO Max and also in theaters. If you want to watch along with us, we'll be discussing both of those in full spoilers, as well as whatever other stuff kind of comes up in the week. Thank you, everybody, for listening. You can reach me on Twitter. I'm at Tyson Gifford. You can reach Will. He is at Voxel Hero. Please leave us some feedback, good, bad, or indifferent. Tell us your thoughts on Squid Game, and we might read that on the podcast. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Good night.
Night.
Thank you for listening to the OnScreen podcast, the official podcast of The Total Screen. Visit our website at thetotaliscreen.com. This podcast can be found on any major podcast client, including Pocket Cast and Apple Podcast. The entire backlog of this podcast and other content can be found on our YouTube channel.